It is 2 o'clock, so I will go ahead and start us off. Good afternoon. I am Taylor Post, Swiftland's office manager, and I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar, Be a Manager and a Leader, Getting Off to a Great Start. Today's presenter, Linda Bruno. Linda Bruno has been developing and conducting training workshops for libraries and other organizations for more than 15 years. She offers workshops on topics ranging from leadership skills to returning balance and lots of areas in between. Linda received her MBA from the University of Florida and has years of experience in hands-on management positions. She develops her workshops based on solid research and, more importantly, real-life application. Linda is also certified with DDI and Achieve Global. Please welcome Linda and enjoy her webinar. Linda?
Thanks so much, Taylor, and welcome everybody as we approach the end of a year. I don't know about you, but that is just so surprising to me. For some reason, it just doesn't seem like it should be here yet. If you recall, in our first of this series, way back in October, we talked about hiring right the first time. In other words, don't just hire the warm body. Don't just look for experience in very specific, detailed types of tasks and projects, but instead look for the behaviors and the qualities and the talents that will best fill that position. Has anybody had any opportunity to think about that further, or to actually use some of that information, or to think about it for a future opening that might be coming up? If so, would you please just take a second to type into the chat box and let us know how you've applied that or how you might be applying it in the future. I realize that's one of those time sensitive areas where we may hit a pocket where you need to hire somebody, but we may not be there for 3 months or 6 months or whenever. So it's information that you can tuck away somewhere and have your own little mini manual by the time we get done with this series called Be a Manager and a Leader, because there'll be different areas that we're going to cover. Okay, I don't see anything popping up in the chat box, but of course I'll keep an eye on that. If you think of anything from the last session, please feel free to type it in there. But in the meantime, we are going to talk about getting off to a great start. So many times I talk to people who are hired for a job, and the day they get there, it's as if nobody knows why they're there. And it's very discouraging and demoralizing and frustrating for the person that's being hired. I can remember that happening to me once when I was just in a temp job. I was actually working, if you remember this name, for Kelly Girls way back when, and they hired me to go to work at a Sears administrative office. And I walked in that day, and the person apparently who needed me was all sick. And nobody knew what to do with me. They sat me down at a desk with an old-fashioned typewriter and some other things that I had no idea what they wanted me to do with them. And they found a few little things for me to do that day. But it made me think, gosh, if they ever had a full-time opening, I don't think I would want to work here. So keep in mind that the way you start somebody off in their position will influence their opinion of working with your library. It's as if it's a first impression, isn't it? And it really truly is. They may have seen your library many times as a patron or just somebody who came in for something or whatever, and they certainly probably saw it during their interview, but the actual impression that they will make as an employee only happens once. So, or not that they will make, but that they will receive from you and from the library environment really only happens once. And it's that first day or two when they're getting settled in. Do they feel welcome? Do they feel as if somebody gave this some thought, or did they just plop them into a chair and away we go? So that's what we're going to think about. So what I want to ask you, why do you think it's important for our employees to feel welcomed and included? I've mentioned a couple things already, but I want you to think about that. Why would this be such a crucial part of your process for your employees? Would you type that into the chat box? No right or wrong answers, just type an answer in there. Absolutely, Doris. You get off on the right foot that way. And Jan said, make them feel welcome and part of the office and boost morale. And it kind of boosts morale for everybody, doesn't it, Jan? Because then everybody feels like this person is part of our team and they're not looking at them suspiciously or wondering whose job they're going to take or anything like that. Claire said, as a new employee, if they're ready for me, I feel valued. That's another key word, isn't it? And George said, sense of being part of something important. And we can help that sense, can't we, George? Certain things that we do those first hours or days that they're with us can make them feel like they're part of something important, which then influences how they feel about their library completely. And who wouldn't want to make sure that they're feeling good about their library? And Sarissa said there will be good work morale. Absolutely. Kathleen said to feel welcome and part of the team. And they're valued, Lisa said. Eileen said so they feel like they fit in the organization. And Samantha said it sets the expectations that they are in and expected to contribute to a positive work culture. And so many places today don't really have a positive work culture. I was reading a statistic the other day from the most recent, I think it's pronounced Deloitte, and I could be pronouncing that wrong, very well known survey company, employee engagement company, that kind of thing. And they were saying that the headline was employee engagement has risen. And so I've been following this particular survey for several years and I thought, oh, wow, that's surprising. And I looked and it had gone up from 32.5% to 34%. I really don't consider that worthy of a headline that only 1 out of 3 employees are actually engaged in their work. So, as Samantha says, we want to set those expectations so right from the beginning, it's a positive culture. And Rita said you want to keep that, you want them to come back and keep working for you. You want them to keep being enthused and an advocate for the library. And here's another thing to think about. Let's say they came to work for you and they got off to a really good start and they felt like part of the team and felt like they were doing something important, but something happened and they had to leave their job. Guess what? The impression that you made on them when they first came to work carries over into the community, even if they're no longer employed there, doesn't it? It carries over in the sense that they're going to be an advocate for the library. They're going to have a special place in their heart for the library. Where if we just, again, plop them into a chair and hand them a bunch of work and they have to leave in a year or two, it's going to be, oh, well, I left the library, no big deal. So why not create that community feeling as well? And Claire said, if you can't do that work you were hired to do, you wonder if they really need the work done. Absolutely. I have a few other things, but before I put them up there, I'm just going to give you an example that my niece shared with me a few years ago. She started a new job and she said, I went into this job and the lady that hired her had actually been a client of hers. She was working for an HR company, and this was one of their clients. And eventually, this lady said, I'd like you to come to work for me. So my niece went to work for them. And when she got there, she walked into her workspace, and there was a vase of flowers there. It wasn't anything real elaborate, but just a nice little vase of flowers. There was a business card there that they had made up with her name on it already, a key to the building, and then the person that hired her came in and welcomed her and actually had her spend several hours in the break room that day meeting people, which I thought was really cool. They didn't overwhelm her with a lot of paperwork and rules and regulations and policies. They wanted her to feel like she was part of the team. And so that's what they did. The bigger boss, I'm going to use that term for lack of a better way to say it, wasn't in town, but called her to welcome her, which I thought was really unusual. So there are a lot of little things that we can do to make sure people feel welcome and to make sure they get off to a great start without spending an awful lot of money. And I even tell people sometimes that because people have said to me, my library can't afford to buy a vase of flowers. You know, sometimes if you're a manager and a leader, you might want to think about spending your own money. And I'm just throwing that out there as an idea. I realize none of us are overpaid, that's for sure. But, and it's not from a sense of trying to buy somebody's loyalty or anything like that. It's just from a sense of really appreciating people to come to work for you. So, kind of think about that sometimes because, again, it doesn't have to cost a lot. Sometimes you can buy a carnation for $1 or 2. And if you've got old garage sale vase. You can stick it in an old garage sale vase and put it on somebody's workspace. So it's things like that that we're talking about here. So why is it important? I put down a positive start. That's what you all said. Exactly, Hyacinth. It's inexpensive to do welcome balloons. And you know what? If you didn't want to buy the Mylar balloon with the welcome, because it is maybe more than you'd want to spend, buy a little bag of balloons and blow a few of them up, right? And just tie them to their workspace somewhere on a chair or whatever that you can tie those balloons to, just to let them know. And you could write on them with marker. You could even, and this is just popping into my head, you have to forgive me for that. Some of you that know me know that these ideas pop into my head. You could have all the other staff members write messages on the balloons. How cool is that? I like that idea. That just popped into my head. So I'll just throw that out to you. I don't know if that would work or not, but a positive start. It creates enthusiasm for not only the people that are being hired, but also the other people in the group. Here's the thing I want to kind of just throw out there. Sometimes people say to me, we've never done anything like that. Now my employees that have been here for a while are going to be resentful of the new person because they get welcomed and the employees that have been here for a while never got anything like that. So I've even suggested sometimes that people actually tell their current employees, you know what, I want to celebrate all of you. I'd like to make sure that we welcome new people. But I realize if I do that, that kind of leaves you all out. So I'm going to bring lunch on Friday, or I'm going to do whatever, and then bring balloons for them with a name for each one of them or whatever. And then when a person's hired 6 months or 9 months or a year from now, it won't be offensive. There won't be any reason to be jealous or resentful of the new person because you've already done it for everybody that works there. Samantha said we do similar to the balloon suggestion. Staff sign and write notes, but with a welcome sign. Exactly. Great ideas to get people off to a good start. Again, it doesn't mean that it will necessarily be a good fit. Hopefully, if you use the little tips and techniques we talked about in October for hiring right, it'll be more likely that it will be a good fit. But there are times where the job that you hired for, you thought you had a good fit, it wasn't for either one of you. They may leave anyway, but not why not send them off with a good feeling about the library? It just didn't happen to fit the job that they were hoping for. So it does create enthusiasm. Hyacinth said, I have had staff who've saved their welcome banners and balloons for many years. Yeah, you know why, Hyacinth? Because you made them feel valued and appreciated. And many of you have heard me say over the years that is still the number one thing that people would like to have from their jobs. It isn't necessarily showing up in surveys as often as it used to. And I think, and I've read some on this, that part of that is because the internet and the news and all of the LinkedIn articles and all of those kinds of things tell us we should be looking at wages and is it competitive and do you get enough vacation and are your health benefits good? We all want that stuff, don't we? But when it comes right down to it and the surveys are anonymous, people often say they want to feel appreciated. And they don't necessarily walk up to the boss and say, I need you to make me feel appreciated. They might say, I need a raise, but they hardly ever talk about appreciation. You know, it's so funny because just last night I was watching a rerun of Home Improvement, if any of you have ever watched that. And it's about a guy by the name of Tim Taylor, and he has a TV show that it's called Tim the Tool Man on his TV show, and he has a very attractive female assistant, which is part of the draw of the show for the male audience on this comedy. So last night, one of the previous female assistants came back and was telling them that she needed a job, but what the newer assistant didn't hear was that she was going to be a paramedic. So the newer assistant thought that she was going to take her job away from her. And she stayed as a guest host that day. And so the newer person ended up quitting. And when Tim the Tool Man called to see or checked with her to see why she was quitting, she said, you don't appreciate me. She said, I would have stayed if I felt like you appreciated me. And he said, but I do appreciate you. You're one of the reasons we have good ratings and da 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 da. And he said, you know that. I tell you that. And she said, no, you never have. And it just struck me how even in something as simple as a comedy on TV. They're pulling out a real life situation. We all want to feel appreciated. And then that leads to the other thing that I put on the screen. That leads to retention, doesn't it? Because if I feel appreciated, I've talked to many people over the years that have told me they could get paid better somewhere else or have better benefits, but they don't want to leave because they feel appreciated. I've also talked to people that have left because they didn't feel appreciated. So retention comes into play there as well. Because no matter how good you were at hiring right the first time, and maybe you thought you had a perfect fit, if that person comes to work with you and in the first week or 30 days feels like nobody really cares, they're going to start looking if they have the opportunity. So why give them that thought in their mind? Why not just make sure you do what you can to retain them? And as I said earlier, it creates loyalty not only with employees who stay, but it also creates that sense of loyalty with employees who go out into the community to look for other jobs for better pay or whatever it might be. If they felt like people really valued them at the library, you're still going to have that loyalty factor in there. There's a shorter learning curve. And that's kind of one of those odd things, but it seems that people who feel welcomed right from the beginning don't have the added stress of feeling like they don't fit in. They don't have that concern about asking questions. Oh my gosh, I don't feel comfortable asking questions because nobody has even spoken to me the first 3 days I've been here. You can imagine those feelings. But if somebody's already welcoming them and writing them notes on balloons and all those kinds of things or on their welcome banner, then they're going to feel natural at asking questions, aren't they? It's not going to be a scary thing to ask somebody a question because they're going to feel like they're already among members of their own team. So there'll be a shorter learning curve. It also helps them feel proud, like somebody said earlier. I think George said it helps them feel proud to be part of something worthwhile, be part of that team, all those good things. Other things, they feel secure. Like I said, when I went to work for that, and it was a temporary job, and I understand they wouldn't have made a big deal about that, but they should have at least had work lined up for me. But I wouldn't have felt secure going back to work for them full time because there was such a disjointed feeling about the whole thing. So if I walk in and you have made the effort, and I can see even that you might have spent a little bit of money, not that that's an important piece, but the fact that you made the effort to go shopping and buy balloons, or you made the effort to buy a little bag of balloons and you made the effort to blow up those balloons and to have people write notes on them or whatever it might be, isn't that going to give me a stronger sense of security right from the beginning? Because I think, golly, if you've made that effort and you've put in that much thought to me coming to work for you, I already feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. So they feel secure. And of course, that circles right back to retention and all of those good things. And I already mentioned they also feel valued. It creates a bond, doesn't it? You've taken the time to welcome them aboard. You've taken the time to not just focus on policies and rules, but to really see them as a person. And that helps create a bond. And when you create a bond with people, they work more easily together. They're more willing to bring ideas to you. There are a lot of benefits to creating those bonds. And it connects them to everybody else. And that's what we're really talking about. We want not only the new employee to feel good about this, we want the people that have been there already to feel good about this. So you want that bond created so it connects the whole team. Now, you know what? I just want to be really transparent here and tell you, you and I both know that you could follow every single thing we're going to talk about today, and it's not working. Maybe your current team feels something's not right, or the new employee feels something's not right. So there are no magic bullets to this, but there certainly are ways we can increase our probability of success when we're hiring new people. Number one says consider connecting with your new employees before they report to work. What are some ways you could do that? Well, you could send a welcome packet to them by mail or by email. Something coming in the mail might be fun for them if you send it far enough in advance, but certainly by email would get to them right away. And it could just be a little welcome packet with things from maybe testimonials about your library, stories about your library, some of the things that they need to know. What are the times that you're open? What, give them a list of holidays for the next year, whatever it might be, but some kind of a welcome packet that they don't have thrown at them, so to speak, when they first get there. It's actually in front of them before they get there, and they have a few minutes to actually look it over instead of being immersed in their job while they're trying to learn about what's in the welcome packet. You might even call them the night before. I have a friend that does this, and it's very effective. The people have never, as far as I know, thought to themselves, why is she checking on me? It's always been, I just wanted to touch base with you and tell you I'm really looking forward to you being here tomorrow, and to let you know that you'll get in at about 9 and I have a board meeting at 9 or whatever might be going on. So it's just one of those, again, that person's thinking about me the night before I come to work there. That makes me feel valuable. Now, if I called up and said, just wanted to remind you, you need to be at work at 9 tomorrow. Uh-oh, there is no right start in that sentence, is there? Because I feel like somebody's checking up on me, and if I have a certain behavioral tendency, I'm going to feel like I'm being criticized already and I'm not even working there. But if I just called them to say, I'm looking forward to seeing you and I plan on being there at 9 o'clock as well, so I can greet you first thing in the morning. C says send them a handwritten note before they start. Now, you're not going to do all of these because it's going to seem almost stalkerish, isn't it? If you do everything that we talk about today. But how many of you, just type yes or no, have gotten a handwritten, personalized note from somebody in the last 90 days? Yes, I see a couple yeses. This is good. Never, somebody said. I see those flying by quick. We had a few yeses, we had lots of nos, and we had one never. Now, from the yeses, how did that make you feel? Would you let us know? And it doesn't have to relate to your job or anything like that, but when you got a handwritten note from somebody, how does that make you feel? Seen and acknowledged. Love those words. Tie that right in, as Glenn said, to the appreciated piece. Special and loved. Mary said, I received a bouquet of fresh flowers. Thank you notes, George said. You know, years ago, I was working in a program here in Marion County, and we were working with our workforce board with people who had lost their jobs. And we talked about sending thank you notes to people who had interviewed them. So occasionally somebody would pick up on that idea and drop a thank you note to the people that were facilitating the group. There were 4 of us. And the ones that just said, thank you for putting this program together, signed John Doe, I threw away. It was nice of them, but I threw it away. The ones that would say something along the lines of, thank you for showing me who I really am at my core because that's going to help me be a better employee, I kept. You hear the difference? If you're going to send a handwritten note, make it personal to them. Now, I'm not talking about getting personal with them. I'm talking about saying, I can't wait to see what you're going to do with the summer reading program or something along those lines where they feel like you're actually paying attention to them as an individual. Just keep that in mind. People appreciate getting notes. And here again, you can go to the dollar store and get a packet of 12 for $1. So it's not like they're real expensive. Yes, stamps are a little more expensive these days, but you're not hiring that many people that would really be an issue, I don't think. So you might consider sending a handwritten note before they start to arrive maybe, if your timing is good, 3 or 4 days before they start, so that they're thinking about that and they're looking forward to their job and those kinds of things. So I have that little librarian, the original search engine up there because that's actually a card that is offered at Cafe Press. I use cards sometimes in some of the programs that I do that are very specific. And there are all kinds of library and librarian cards at Cafe Press. They are not real expensive, but more expensive than the dollar store cards, but still kind of a nice, specialized, very personal kind of a thing. So the handwritten notes can be very important as well. It just doesn't happen, and it's happening less and less with social media and texting and emailing and all those kinds of things. We just aren't writing handwritten notes anymore. So that's why it becomes extra special. Make sure you have a plan for the very first day, not just to put them in front of a desk with a manual that is 312 pages long in 8-point font to read about all the policies and procedures and rules that you're supposed to abide by, but something kind of planned out for the day. As I said, make sure you're there with them, Make sure they know what they're supposed to do. Don't be setting up big expectations for that first few days. You want to make sure they feel comfortable being in the environment, but you want to make sure they don't feel like at the end of the day, I wonder why they hired somebody in this position. They didn't have anything for me to do. You don't want that to happen. You might even assign them a tour guide, kind of a mentor for that first few days. But if you're in a big building, especially, that tour guide can show them where the restrooms are, where the fire extinguishers are, where fiction is, where the most comfortable chairs are, or whatever it might be. But just somebody to kind of, not literally, but kind of hold their hand, if you will, to make sure they know they have somebody they can touch base with if they have any questions, somebody that will kind of walk them through. Isn't that what a tour guide does? They walk us through, they educate us about what we're looking at, what we're seeing, what we're hearing. The same thing can happen in your environment. Another way to make sure you have that plan for the first day is to make learning about your organization fun. Yes, they need to learn a lot of stuff about your library and how it operates and how the community works and all those kinds of things. So consider some activities to engage them in that learning process. What do you think you might be able to do? Again, no right or wrong answers, but if you're thinking about a new employee, you want to help them learn more about your library or the community or the services you offer or the programming that you do, what kinds of things could you do to help that process along? Yes, exactly, Doris. It's the first thing I have on my list when I was brainstorming this for myself, a scavenger hunt. People love scavenger hunts, and I tried to give you a little bit of a clue there with the graphic that I put up there. But it's something enjoyable, and it's sinking in for them without them even realizing it. There's also, and I wish I had the current name, but I used to use this website. It was called puzzlemaker.com. And I can't remember, I think somebody bought them and I can't remember who has them now. And the last time I used it, it cost $6 to make a puzzle. And that was okay because I was doing a conference and I wanted to do that for those folks. But you could make a puzzle and pay a one-time fee and then copy it when you needed to. And it could be a puzzle that had clues and answers that were evergreen, if you will, that they didn't really change. You wouldn't say, what program are we going to have December 17th because the person wouldn't know. But it would be things that about your community and all that. You have the puzzle squares and you also have the answers. That I think that when I've done that, and I've done it probably a half a dozen times over the years in different situations where I knew people were going to be sitting and waiting while somebody else did something or whatever, I would have these puzzles. So that might be something that you could use. As I said, if you put in puzzlemaker.com, it'll probably pull up the new one. I apologize for not having that at the top of my head, but it just occurred to me when I looked down and saw my word scavenger hunt. I thought, oh yeah, we could do puzzles too. So you all know that happens to me. I have these sort of bursts of ideas as I'm talking to you. Claire said, catalog a database scavenger hunt. Trick or treat by department. Find the department, get a treat. I love that. Or find something in the library and there's a treat hidden there, right? So that would be fun as well. What's that called? Geocaching? You could do geocaching in your library. Wouldn't that be fun? That if they found a certain book, that book was actually weeded, but we hollowed it out and put a geocache treat in there, and we only put it on the shelf when we hire a new employee. Oh, I like that one too, and I didn't even have that one written down. So yes, absolutely, Claire. Trick or treat, scavenger hunt by catalog and database, all those things. A couple of other things. A Q&A with our newest employee. Sit down and just with a group of people that maybe volunteer and say, you know what, at lunch, we'd like to kind of have a roundtable discussion. And you wouldn't do it maybe their first day, but let them know the first day that we're going to sit down tomorrow at lunch and answer any questions you might have or answer them to the best of our ability. And then the employees could also feel free to say, where did you grow up? Kind of those gentle questions to get to know more about that person. You're not going to probe, you're not going to dig, but they've already been hired, so these questions aren't going to be relevant to whether they get hired or not. So there shouldn't be any danger of people getting lawsuits or anything like that. But just those questions where eventually you're going to get to that. But if you have that Q&A on both sides, then both of you might feel more comfortable with that person. They might feel more comfortable with you, and you might feel more comfortable with them. A story hour about your library. Genevieve says, have the current team share an impactful moment they have had with a customer or patron. Oh, Genevieve, and I did not even pay Genevieve to type that into the chat box, but it tied right in with just what I'm saying, didn't it, Genevieve? Have a story hour about your library. And I encourage people in many of my programs on lots of different topics to start collecting stories in your library. This is one of the places you could use those stories. And I'm talking about putting enough details maybe on a 5x7 index card and keeping those somewhere where people can access them. A couple reasons that don't really even have anything to do with what we're talking about today. One reason would be there are days in your library, if you're like every other library I work with, where you feel like you never do anything good. Maybe every cranky patron that you've ever had shows up on the same Tuesday. And you think, tell me again why I'm doing this. If you have a bank of cards, if you have a file that where all the cards are kept and people keep adding to those, then you can go back and see those powerful stories, can't you, Genevieve? You can see why it made a difference. I remember one in particular, I was doing a program where we weren't creating them, but we were gathering, I guess you would say, the stories from this system. And there were 100 and some people in this system. And I was doing some workshops with them. And so at each session, which had different amounts of people in it, we would gather stories. And one of the stories that there were several that struck me, but one of them that struck me was this particular branch of this library system had a little boy who couldn't see. So they had some braille things for him that he could use and so forth. He always ran up to the counter of the circ desk to grab a bookmark, even though he didn't know what was on the bookmark or anything. He would grab a bookmark, and that always seemed to make him happy. And so they had the idea one day to get a braille label maker, and they purchased it. I don't know how much it cost, but they purchased it, and they typed out a message to him and put it on the bookmark. And they kept it at the desk, and the next time they saw him come in, they popped it into the bookmark holder. He came running up to the circ desk like he always did, and he grabbed that bookmark, and he instantly knew there was something different, and he started to feel the braille, and he went running to his mom. He was so excited because that message was to him. Now, that's not anything that's going to save the world or anything like that, but that's exactly, I think, why a lot of you do what you do, because you make a difference in people's lives. Can you imagine being a new employee, going into a library, and having people spend an hour telling you about all the things that your library does that make it unique in the library world because you're changing people's lives and you're making a difference? I'm thinking that's a pretty powerful way to start people off. So absolutely, that word impactful that Genevieve used is what we're looking for. Not just the things of, well, we had a little girl that read 9 books in 1 month. That's nice and that's good. And if she'd never read before, that's extremely good and that could be a story. But when you're doing those story hours, make sure you tell the feelings and the difference that you made, because that will set an employee off definitely on the right foot. Hold a welcome to our library party. Welcome to our team. Welcome to our staff. Welcome to our department. Whatever it might be, but the first day with the things that we've mentioned. You can use the balloons. You could use the carnation on the workspace. You could use candy. You could use a carry-in lunch that other people contributed to. Whatever it might be, welcome them to your team. What else could you do to welcome them to your team at the party the first day, do you think? I'm just asking for more brainstorming ideas here. You see George is typing, so I don't want to go on until I see what his response is. Don't want to skip any of them. You all are having great ideas and thoughts today. Ah, George says we usually do breakfast, bagels and such. Food almost always works, doesn't it, George? And, it's a little tougher nowadays because we have to worry about allergies and things like that. But usually we can even accommodate that if we tell the people we're getting it from what we need. So certainly breakfast, bagels, and that makes it kind of a party atmosphere for everybody. And we're all having fun that way. So have some kind of a welcome to our team party that first day. Maybe even have other people join the scavenger hunt. One or two people actually arrange it, and everybody else gets to participate as well. Kathleen said each person introduces themselves and tells a little bit about themselves. Yeah, what's one thing I wouldn't know about you? Obviously, they're going to know not to say anything vulgar or rude or anything like that, but what's one thing that I might not know about you? It might be the number of siblings they have or something like that. So absolutely, Kathleen, that would get people to know each other a little bit better, wouldn't it? Dee says arrange for them to have lunch with someone so that they aren't sitting in the lunchroom by themselves or sitting out in the car by themselves, unless that's their choice. And if they just need some downtime, understand that as well. If you can tell by the look on their face that they feel like they've just been run over with a bulldozer because of the overwhelming things that have been going on, they might need a little bit of downtime. That's okay too. But at least consider arranging to have somebody have lunch with them. And Jan said she normally takes the new person to lunch, which is even better because it gets them away. It gives you a chance to say, so what impressed you so far? What questions do you have so far? What can I help you with so far? Or something along those lines. Give them a heads up. Give the current employees a heads up. Let them know somebody's coming in. It's a little bit kind of unbalancing, if you want to call it that. I don't know how to say that, but a little bit nerve-wracking maybe to show up to work on Monday and a new person pops in and you didn't even know you were looking for a new person, that the library was looking for a new person. So give those people a heads up so there isn't that animosity going on before that new person ever gets there or before they've had a chance to hang up their coat. Everybody's whispering about, who's that? Why did they hire them? Did you know that job was open? All those kinds of things that human beings do. Not just your human beings, but human beings in general. So give them a heads up and let them know the person that's coming in, why you're filling that position, or whatever you think is appropriate to share with them. Set up their workspace before they arrive. It may only be a place to put their belongings or whatever, but don't go scrambling around cleaning a place out while they're standing there waiting. It looks like you weren't really expecting them, doesn't it? Instead, think if I'm walking in my first day of the job, what do I need to have as far as space? Do I need some place to put my lunch? Then show me where the refrigerator is and the microwave in case I need to warm it up or whatever. Do I need to put my book bag somewhere? Lots of people at libraries, surprisingly, haha, carry book bags. So set up their workspace before they arrive so they don't feel like they were unexpected. Give them a different welcome packet at their workspace when they arrive. What could that other welcome packet have? You already emailed them a welcome packet with maybe some things that they needed to know about the library and about a few of the rules. George says if you have a friends group, I try to get a book bag with a logo for their desk. Absolutely. Pull in any favors. I have one library that would save all of their goodies, and I don't know that this happens that much anymore, but Staples and Office Depot and places like that used to give you a free tape dispenser if you ordered 6 rolls of tape, or a special kind of a pen if you ordered this or that. And they would put those all in a locked closet during the year. And then they would pull those out when they needed to share them with people because then it didn't cost them anything. They'd already ordered the supplies, and this was just a little extra. Nobody was fighting over who got it because they knew it all went into this closet. They would save them for new employees as well as their holiday party where they would draw names or even their staff day. So what might the different welcome packet have now that they are at work? What might you have at their workspace in their welcome packet? As George said, it could be a book bag with a logo. What else? A calendar? Yes. Claire said I received a mug with cocoa packets, pens, a keychain, bookmarks on my first day. Look at the little smiley face. And George said put a calendar in there for him. Especially maybe even a calendar with the holidays that you'll get off, right? Or something like that that they can refer to so that they aren't wondering. Genevieve said we're lucky enough to have library shirts. There you go. That book bag's going to be full. Menus for places close to have lunch, a calendar, telephone list of other employees. And along with those menus, why not go to those places and say, do you have any coupons that I could include for our new employee? Wouldn't that be cool? If the first day there were 6 places available they could go to lunch and 3 of them had coupons. We're all, at least people I know are all looking to save a buck. So that might be something that would be helpful too. Bookmarks, stickers, calendars, library promotional materials. Absolutely. Think about how that employee is going to feel if they walk in with that kind of a welcome packet. Maybe a little piece of candy, $100,000 bar or whatever those are called, something like that, or Smarties or something that's kind of cute and tied in with the fact that they're a new employee. Dove promises, something that's going to be a little bit more meaningful than just a plain old piece of candy, which most people are going to take anyway, because again, food works. So, something else, what else might they need that you would want to put on their workspace? What else might they a lanyard, Kathleen said, absolutely. What else might they need in your library? Office supplies. That might be a stapler, tape, paper clips, the things you see on the slide, right? They're not going to need a triangle probably. They might not need any Elmer's glue. Some of those things. Some of them I can't even remember what the names are. The compass, But you know what they need. Don't make them go looking for a pen the first day. Don't make them even go looking for a pair of scissors because maybe there's something in their book bag that they want to trim or whatever. So make sure that you've got that set up for them. Doris said also include a latest internal newsletter. Absolutely. An empty list of office supplies they want. Claire, you could put something in a Word document of what you have available, what you consider standard fare around your library with little check boxes, and just print off a fresh copy every time a new employee comes in. Love that. Clean the desk. I love that, George. Then that little carnation sitting there is going to look a lot prettier, isn't it? But don't have them come in. I remember, this is going to sound horrible, and it was horrible. I took over a position many years ago when I was doing my corporate job, and I moved back to Ohio from Louisiana because I've been working with the same company in Louisiana. And they hired me to do this fellow's job, and they ended up firing him because he wasn't doing his job. So I walked into the office the first day and I pulled open the desk drawer, and there was one of those little old desks used to have several cubbies right in front of them and in the middle drawer, just little mini drawers, if you would, slots. And he had clipped his fingernails into one of those for the whole time he was there, apparently, because it was almost full. I almost got sick. So yes, clean the desk, not just outside, but inside, right, George? Make sure there's no detritus of left over from somebody else, no, things that people wouldn't want to see, or even scraps of paper or whatever. Absolutely. Sarah said we also show them where the supply area is. Yeah, ooh is right, just in case they don't like what we already set up for them. Absolutely, because then you're giving them a choice. And George said, maybe Clorox wipes. That's what I could have used back in the day, George. Eileen said, create an attractive name sign for their desk, festive looking and with the word welcome. All of the above. Sanitizer, yes. I'm seeing people still typing. I don't want to step on this because you have so many great ideas. I hope some of you are capturing those. You can always go back and listen to the recording, but I hope you're capturing some of those for future use. Notepads, binder clips, a phone, like somebody said, a phone list. Claire said, I started a job once where the entire desk was covered with books that needed to be cataloged. I spent most of my day clearing it off so I could turn on the computer. Yes, I walked into an office when I was starting a position, and the person before me was way overwhelmed with this work, apparently, because there were stacks of file folders on the floor all over this office. And after a week, the guy that hired me called me back to his office and he said, I thought you'd have this under control by now. And I looked at him and I almost laughed. I said, this has been out of control since you hired him, and I've been staying till 7 o'clock every night. It's still going to take me a while. And he got real quiet and he never addressed that again because it was, yeah, spend your whole day or your whole week or your whole whatever clearing somebody else's mess. Don't do that to people. Consider posting a welcome flag of some sort. I just had to put that little graphic on there. I think that's so cute. But some kind of a little, it can be, you can get blank banners from Oriental Trading or places like that, and you could put some kind of a little welcome flag together for that person. It could say, hi, my name is Linda, or hi, my name is Linda and I started Monday or whatever it might be, and have them put that someplace on their desk so that people that aren't really sure about that could actually use that to get acquainted with this person. Oh, hi, Linda. I didn't realize you started today. I didn't get a chance to come in this morning when you were here for the welcome party. Give them a map. And when I say a map, it might be a map of the area, your community, if they're not from there or not really familiar with it. It might just be a map of your library, because even in smaller libraries, sometimes it can get confusing for people when their brain cells are already overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, I'm starting a new job. What do I do now? Kind of a thing. E says have a jargon translator in their packet. There is, I think it's called Unjargon. I can't remember. There is an actual library jargon translator on the computer. So you might want to give them that website as well. But I worked with a group once and a lady came up to me at break and she said, and we weren't even talking about this and it wasn't even a library, but she said, I almost quit after my first 3 months because people were using so much jargon. I felt stupid. Now remember, people want to feel valued and appreciated. If you keep throwing jargon at them as if they understand what you're talking about, it makes them feel stupid. Even if you're thinking, oh gosh, I didn't even realize, whatever, understand the more jargon that they're not familiar with, the less comfortable they're going to feel. So just be aware of that. Make a list of go-to people. Who do I go to if I need the copier fixed? Who do I go to if my email isn't working? Who do I go to if I can't find XYZ? Who do I go to check the policy that somebody broke? Whatever it might be, some kind of a list of go-to people so that they aren't wandering around trying to do things on their own, which is fine, but feeling very unsuccessful because they're not sure what they're supposed to be doing. Make sure their supervisor is going to be there the first day to greet them, if at all possible. Sometimes it's not, but if the supervisor is going to be at meetings all day on Monday, maybe they could start on Tuesday. And that depends some on your HR department and your payroll and all that. And I understand that. But you understand the idea behind that so that they feel like the person that is going to be responsible for them keeping their job is actually engaged from day one. Number 6 says introduce them to upper management too. So maybe they're going to be reporting directly to you, but there are 3 more levels, and make sure you introduce them. Years ago, when I was in my corporate job, we were touring our Louisiana factories with our sales force, and the owner of the company was with us. And I'd known him since I was a kid, basically. So I was very comfortable with him. And I was talking to one of the employees. It was a sewing facility. And I was talking to one of the employees at her machine. And she said, I would love to meet him. I've never met him and I've worked here for 3 years. So I just walked over to him and I said, the lady sitting over there with the red blouse on would love to meet you. And he had a big smile on his face and walked over and talked to her for a few minutes. And I swear to goodness, you could see her glow. He wasn't important. I don't mean it to sound that way. You know what I'm saying. He wasn't any more important than anybody in the room, but it made her feel important, and he felt good making her feel important. So make sure you're introducing him to upper management. Now, I will say here a little caveat. If your upper management is not very kind or welcoming, you can skip this step. That's all I'm going to say. Number 7, be sure the person training the new employee has time, patience, and a positive attitude. I walked into a training area of the corporate job I was in, and a friend of mine ran that department. She had a person that did a lot of her training. I walked in one day. This person was slouched down in the chair with her arms crossed. Her head was actually hitting the bottom part of the chair. She was so slouched down, and all I could think of was, if I were a new employee, I would think, uh-oh, I'm in trouble now. Schedule a check-in date within the first week or two. That way you can say, okay, what's come up? I'm sure something has come up. Or often people wonder about this at this stage, or whatever it is, and you can address the concerns at that point. Number 9, and we're about in the middle of page 2 now, says make it obvious that you or their direct supervisor will be available at any time to answer questions. Not that they feel they can't approach you. Not that they feel that they have to set up an appointment with you, especially the first week or so. Try to be as approachable and as available as you possibly can so that it's just a natural occurrence for them to say, "Hey, Linda, I was wondering about this." And I stop what I'm doing and I turn to them and I have my full attention on them so that they know they're the most important thing that's happening in my life right now. Number 10 says have something meaningful lined up for them to do as soon as basic training is complete. And I put that in quotes because I don't know what your basic training would be. But if it's a day or two just getting familiar with the library, they already have the experience they need. Then if they already have that experience and you're ready for them to hit the ground running, make sure it's something meaningful that they feel like, again, they're part of the team. They're making a difference here. Don't bombard them with every aspect of policies and procedures the very first day. That can be so overwhelming. Even HR policies. I know they need to know all of that, but guess what? If you bombard them with all of it the first day, they're not going to remember anyway, are they? And when something comes up, they're still going to have to ask that question. So try to parse that out. Yes, you'll have to have them sign their tax forms and things like that right away. Totally acceptable, totally understandable. But if we then start piling on the 312 pages of rules and regulations and patrons can do this and they can't do that and all those kinds of things, it could overwhelm them. Number 12 says consider having them report to work on one of your least busy days. If you know that Mondays are always just swamped, you'll never have time to talk to them on a Monday. Again, maybe there's a way you can arrange to have them start to work on a less busy day. Keep your expectations low. I mentioned that earlier, but most of the time they're going to be a little bit overwhelmed, even if it's an exact perfect fit for them, because it's a new environment, it's new people, they're learning new things. So kind of keep those expectations low for the first week or so. Make a list of frequently asked questions. What do new employees typically want to know about? That might be one of those things that you could put in their book bag that you put on their workspace from the beginning. What are the frequently asked questions? Or you can discern this. Maybe you want to hold this list for 2 or 3 days. Once they feel like they're actually at a job now, then you can give them the FAQ list and say, here are some of the things that typically come up. Do you have any other questions? Or does any of this not make sense to you? Like jargon, like the way of the library. Well, we do have these rules, but we love our patrons, so we are always willing to adjust those if we can. So that would be the way of the library that wouldn't be written down anywhere and that they wouldn't know without somebody giving them some hints. Maybe some favorite lunch spots, as Jan mentioned earlier, informal groups that are in the library. We have a group that meets on Tuesday and we talk about blah, blah, blah. Or we have a group that goes out bowling once a month or whatever it is. Some of those things so that they feel drawn into that if they choose right from the beginning and they don't find out about it by accident. Lots of little words there. Like somebody said earlier, an email or phone list. What are the friends working on? Just so they're aware, so that if people come into the library and ask, or friends members come into the library, this person will then be more aware of that. A list of the VIPs, and those could be in your organization or in your community. If the mayor comes in frequently, or the mayor's wife or whatever, let people know. Mrs. Smith will come in and she loves Tom Clancy novels or something like that. What else can you think of that might go on your FAQ list? Just type it into the chat box. I see some things popping up here. Their schedule, absolutely, that's a good idea. Let them know when they're going to be working. You probably may have already gone over that, but they're going to forget that sure as we're sitting here. How to get certain things done on campus, absolutely, or in another library setting. Upcoming events, even in the community if they're not familiar. The coffee club, the fun committee. When new movies are released, all of the above. Your lists are going to be really good. A piece of chocolate every day at 2. That works for me. I'll be over. Oh, I missed it today, Jan. I'll have to wait, but that'll work. Food, again, introduce them to and on your social media if they're okay with that. Some people are very reluctant to have anything posted about them on social media. That's perfectly acceptable. But if they're okay with that, it would be a great place to make them feel welcome. Give them some library swag, which we've covered quite a bit already about the things that you might put in their book bag. Have a touch base period at the end of the very first day. Just wanted to check in and see if we've totally overwhelmed you today. And hopefully they'll smile and they might say yes, and that's okay too. Try to have processes and procedures in writing so that you aren't throwing a bunch of information at them, keeping in mind that the largest percentage of people as far as communication style are visual. So if they've got something they can look at, that would be helpful. Have some one-on-one time with the new employee the first day. Be available to them, of course, but also say, I'd like to sit down with you about 3 o'clock this afternoon and just kind of help you debrief a little bit and see how it's going so far. Number 20 says, interview them after 30 days. Interview them and see, what have you noticed? What did you really love about them? You might even mention this to them right at the beginning. In a month or so, I'd like to sit down with you and get your ideas on things, get a perspective on what you see is going well, what in your area you think you'd like to change, if that's appropriate. Again, you're the supervisor, you're the manager, you're the leader. You decide if that's appropriate. Use your judgment. If it's going to offend, if it's going to, you can't do anything about it anyway, then no, that wouldn't be appropriate. But you could still interview them after 30 days just to see how things are going for them and what you've missed, because that will help you with the next new employee. You could just tell them, we've tried to be really thorough about making sure you have everything you need that first week or so. Is there anything we missed that you felt like would have been helpful? So gather information from that and use it for the future. I just love this welcome message from Apple. It's what every new employee at Apple gets their very first day. There's work and there's your life's work. And I loved it because of the way that first sentence reads, because I hear that so often from library folks. It's printed on your handouts, so you've got it there in front of you. But what I want you to do, we've got a couple minutes left, is to create a welcome message that you could give to your new employees and put it in the middle of page 3. If you're not using your handouts, write it down somewhere. What's a message that you could give to new employees to make them feel like they're valuable and appreciated? Go ahead and do that and then write just a piece of it. You don't have to give us a whole paragraph or anything, but if you put something in the chat box, it might be helpful to somebody else. So take a moment to do that, and then we'll wrap up the rest of the session. I don't have any Apple products, and I love this message. And it's not that I wouldn't want Apple products. I've just never gravitated toward them. I know that people love them to pieces. That's a good one, Jan. There are no insignificant questions. There are no questions that don't matter. They all matter. Your welcome message might say something about our library is a vital part of our community, and we're so glad you're here to share that with us. It can be a little mushy. You wouldn't expect apples to be a little mushy, but there's some mush in there. It's okay. People at their core, a lot of us have a little mush in us, so it's okay to recognize that. Be kind and patient with yourself. There's a lot to learn. I love that. And that might be one of the things you say when you check in with them. I don't know about you, but at this stage, I'm usually overwhelmed, where you acknowledge that you're just like that person. It's a lot to learn. We help students navigate assignments, discover resources, and find help. Welcome to helping us help them. Absolutely. Welcome to helping us help them be a success in their lives, to be their best selves. Okay, thank you for sharing those. It's kind of an interesting little process, isn't it? I think everybody that's in the room today could leave today and work on that one particular part as part of welcoming people aboard and getting them started on the right foot to begin with. That's just, to me, a little bit too stiff. That's why I put it up there. It's a little bit too formal for me. So just to let you know that you might want to be a little more relaxed than that. You might want to do something with a little border around it or on a real pretty piece of stationery or something like that. Are there any other tips you have for your fellow webinar attendees today? What else would help get people off to a great start that we haven't touched on yet? And I know we're at the end of our time. So the last question is, what are you going to do differently? Just being available. Absolutely, Jan. It's a big part. You have to be approachable, don't you? And there. They can't approach you if they're not there. Mary's statement was, our library values librarians who are skilled and knowledgeable. We're here to help you be a sensational employee and to discover how you best serve Broward libraries. Yes, a welcome message. Make sure your welcome message is very welcoming, so don't get into a lot of library jargon, which I have not seen in the chat box, just mentioning that to remind us. What are you going to do differently? Would you type that into the chat box? And then we're going to wrap up today's session. And as you're typing, I know some of you have to leave, so I want to thank you for being here. Our next session is going to be on February 13th, right before Valentine's Day, and we're going to talk about confident coaching. Thanks, Jan. Be more organized and structured in welcoming employees. Yes, make the day easy, but not so easy they're bored. That's a good point. Absolutely. Be patient. I always have to repeat questions that need to be answered a few times. Yes. Going to get all college employees to visit the library on their first day. Oh, that's good. Be more open to meeting one-on-one with them in their first week in 30 days. Excellent. Remember, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So it's up to you to make sure they get off to a great start. Thanks, everybody. See you in February.
Thank you, Linda, for an informative webinar. Attendees, if you enjoyed this webinar, as Linda mentioned briefly before, if you enjoyed the series, the next one will be on February 13th, called Be a Manager and a Leader, Confident Coaching. As always, we encourage you to keep an eye on the Swiftland CE calendar, the Swiftland Facebook page, or your message from the listserv. Thank you everyone for attending and have a great rest of the day.